like he can coming off the bench. I even thought before the LeBron Kevin Love Cavaliers evolved, before I said, man, when you got Varejao and Waiters and a couple of energy, push it, aggressive guys that you can bring out second team, that's where you can really, get a lot of guys and chip a lot of teams away, And I'm big on Dion either way, but when the four of them, the four, Dion, Kyrie, Love, and James were on the floor together, it wasn't always the most beautiful basketball. You could see what could be there, but you can also see where the problems would come in too. And whatever they decide, it's gonna, I'm fine with them, and they have to do it. But I like you said, I like Dion Waiters coming off the bench too. Not in any way because he's not good enough to start, but because he's the man, right? Vashawn in the chat room, he's the man coming off the bench, and then he can play his game more comfortably, and he could be the boss of that second unit.
And Jerry, sometimes it's also important for even a team that has a roster loaded like the Cavaliers. It really isn't a bad thing to have a position or two that are like a revolving door. I mean, you can just kind of put in whoever's hot, or you can deal with matchups or whatever you want to do. And that's why I think that David Blatt, early on in the preseason, while you saw him go to the bench, go get a shooting guard, go get a center, take Andy out of the game, take Dion out of the game, get them their rest early so that when Kyrie and Kevin Love and LeBron sit, that you can make sure that those two guys are on the floor leading the second unit. Now, I think it's pretty conclusive that Varejao is probably going to start opening day, mostly because he's a veteran, because he's been there, because he's played with LeBron before. But the good thing is you can sit those guys at any time that you want. And whenever you get Dion on the floor all by himself, he is quite capable of scoring at a rapid pace. When Kyrie was gone, with the injury a couple years back, Dion scored upwards of 18 a game, and it would not be too terribly often that you wouldn't see him score 20 a game. So, I mean, David Blatt's got some good issues to deal with, and Jerry, we talked about this on the show last week. Good problems are really what you want. You're going to have problems throughout the course of the regular NBA season, but when you have as many pieces as you have to work with, like David Blatt does, he'll find a way to get Dion his touches and to get Andy his big minutes.
Exactly, because if you look at the team, I mean, it's not going to fall this way at every position at all times, but they have the depth to align these first and second units up that there's, I'm not going to say no drop-off. I saw Bruce in the chat room say that, but you want as little as possible, and they can maneuver this right where you really do get that, and then that's where you're going to outlast teams. You're going to be too deep and too talented, but a lot of that too, it's still regular season. I am big on a team like this, and especially in the East. If we were in the West, if we were talking about playoff position, but to me, everything above the maybe 1, 2, 3 seeds over in the East, everybody else is your regular season is a lot more meaningful. And I'm not saying that 82 games aren't meaningful, but the top few teams are making the playoffs hands down. We know that over in the Eastern Conference. So it changes. The style of play completely changes when you get to the playoffs, and that is something that I don't know. We won't know until you see them shrink into having to play half-court basketball, because they can love to push the issue all they want. But at some point, Chicago, doesn't matter who it is, Indiana, if they make it, somebody will make them shrink the court, and they're going to have to play that type of basketball.
Right, and David Blatt has also made a point that it's really important that they play at their own pace. So really, I think that any head coach that you talk to would say that we have to play our brand, our style of basketball. And more often than not, whenever you get to that point in the season, teams are going to be less likely to turn the ball over up high, which thus, on the other end, would create fewer opportunities in transition. But I think that the Cavs are still young enough and athletic enough where they'll still be able to get some of those high turnovers and turn them into easy points. It really doesn't matter what point of the season it is. But, yes, I mean, in the past, LeBron's teams in Miami, they have not lacked a little bit of toughness, but you look at them and you don't exactly point your finger at them and then say, okay, well, the Miami Heat, they're the toughest, most nitty-grittiest physical teams in the league. So there's definitely some room for improvement there. And they're going to need those 82 games to get to that point where they have that synergy, that energy, and that focus, and that know-how of knowing how everybody fluctuates in this offense. So, like LeBron said the other day, you can't fast forward from now until June. Those 82 games are going to be invaluable for them if they want to make a serious run at an NBA title.
I hear you there, but I keep going back to the last 2 seasons that LeBron James played for the Cavaliers. They won 66 and 61 games, and I remind people 66 wins is not a record to sneeze at in the NBA. It is a handful of victories away from the best team in the history of the game. I'm just saying, and of course that was partly the conference and the competition and all of that, but my point is that nobody saw the fold coming that came back-to-back years with those teams when they got in the playoffs and they got mad at each other, and all of a sudden, and that's what I talk about with the chemistry and the team building. And LeBron brought that up, and that's where I said this speaks a bit to the difference in him from when he was here before. Before, those guys, LeBron and Mo and Delonte, those guys thought that team building was taking their little snapshots before the games and doing their posing. They're all listening to the same music in the locker room because times are good. Everybody gets along with. If you can't get along when the times are good, you're just a really curmudgeonly type person. When times are good, everybody's getting along, man. It changes. Your best friendship changes when the relationship has stress on it. No matter how tight you are, and anybody that tells you otherwise is not being honest about it. The real ones last through the tough times. So my point is you can say, and I'm with you, I'm not trying to disvalue 82 regular season games, but not a lesson that they learn in the regular season will mean anything to me. The lessons that this team learns going forward will be learned in the months of May and hopefully June. And however it ends, that will carry over into what lessons they learn for the next 2 or 3 seasons. Because everybody got this June circled, but this is, to me, the beginning of the journey, and I don't think the Cavs win the NBA title this year. I think they win a hell of a lot of games. They have a lot of fun. They get pretty doggone far, and the future is bright. But I don't think they win. I think you got a couple of teams, veteran teams, better than them. One of them is going to beat them because they've got that postseason experience. So you can't get it. We can't manufacture it. David Blatt, LeBron, they can't manufacture it until you get into the playoffs and that stuff starts to happen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Jerry, it's almost like, you're a young guy, kind of like a similar guy in my age, in your mid and late 20s, and you're looking at moving out for the first time, and you're looking at a house, and you say, well, I can't really afford a house, so maybe I'll take my best friend or two, and we'll split the cost, 3-way, and then you do it, you buy the house, you move in with your best friends, and then you say, oh, well, this guy doesn't put his clothes away, or this guy doesn't do this guy doesn't cook, this guy doesn't do that. So then it's a really good way for things to go sour, and then, you look at the situation and say, well, you know what, maybe I'll just settle for, a one-man, one-bedroom, one-bathroom apartment, and then maybe I'll just get a house when I'm ready. The Cavaliers will earn a championship when they are ready, but the question is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? It's definitely not going to be here in October, not now at this point.
Eddy Jansen from More Than a Fan Cleveland joining us here on the Sports Fix. We're talking a little Cavaliers hoops. So, man, we can't fast forward as much as I wish we could just click the fast forward button. Next week, it's going to be crazy here in Cleveland. That's for sure. The big banners are going up. They've got the Beats by Dre one went up and on one of the garages downtown. They've got the big Cleveland/LeBron one going up here next week. And then, of course, the basketball world descends. You know they are when Kevin Hart's coming, and they got the big TNT show here, and the Cavaliers, they kick things off next week. It's going to be crazy. And Cavs announced this week they've jacked up the production values a bit, man, and like I said earlier, trust me, the back end of that will be coming on the ticket prices in the next few years. But man, it's going to be a sick opening night experience-wise next week.
Oh yeah, I mean this is going to be the most highly anticipated Cleveland sporting event, in the last 10, 20 years, if not longer. I mean, I had heard. In just talking with some of my connections that, some of these tickets for this opening game are going to be going, not only through the roof as we expected, but for even more than Super Bowl tickets. I mean, think of that for a second. These Super Bowl tickets go for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a piece, and yet you've got a regular season opening day game where those tickets are going for more. Oh, it's going to be absolutely nuts. I mean, every possible big market media chain is going to be there. The USA Today will be there. The New York Times will be there. The Washington Post will be there. And that doesn't even begin to cover your ESPNs, your NBA TVs, and all of those other news outlets. So it's going to be nuts. I would imagine that there's probably going to be some celebrities in there, although specifics I really couldn't say who or what at this point in time, but we will see come this Thursday.
So you mean more than just Usher will most likely be interested in Cavaliers basketball? What about Usher? He's come back, hasn't he? I know he disappeared for the last few years, but I think LeBron has made Usher want to come back to the queue. Or maybe Usher, or vice versa. You never know. But yeah, Usher was there, I want to say 2 years ago. It was the last year that Byron Scott was there, and he was sitting in the first row. Joe Hayden has been around quite a bit. He's been at a couple preseason games already. A couple Browns players. Ben Tate has been there. I want to say that Joe Thomas has been there once or twice. But, I mean, the names will get bigger. I mean, those are professional athletes. We're talking about singers, musicians, rap stars, billionaire investors. I mean, everybody is going to want to see LeBron James coming home as the prodigal son, the storybook ending here in a city that deserves it so much. I'm telling you, the dollar signs on some of the, like you said, some of the tickets I've seen specifically for next week, man, you could put your kids through college depending on where, or at least give them a good head start on life depending on where you may want to sit next week. It's gonna be crazy. And from that aspect of it, everybody knows where I'm at with LeBron James personally, but with that aspect of it, I'm all for it. Cleveland deserves a party, and I can say, I don't know if they're going to have one on the back end, but they're going to have one next week, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, this is such a blue-collar town that has worked so hard through tough times. I mean, the economy has really tanked here in the last 5 years or so, but we're gonna see an uproar here in the immediate near future because Mr. LBJ is worth an estimated $500 or so million a year to this city. So it's going to be a fantastic sight to see, just some life and some energy coming back to this town. A lot of nightlife downtown in Cleveland. It's going to help out all of the restaurants. All the local businesses are going to benefit from it. And I think eventually you are going to see people kind of gravitating back towards Cleveland after moving to, a different market in the last 5 or so years. But there's a reason to believe in Cleveland. There is a reason to be here, and definitely a reason to be excited going forward.
You got it. Eddy Jansen, my man from More Than a Fan, Cleveland. By the way, what are you working on? What's your latest you're working on there for MTAF Cleveland?
I actually just had a piece that was published about 48 minutes ago. It's 12:48 according to my clock over here, but it was a piece that, ever since Kyrie Irving has came back into the starting lineup, he's only played 3 of the Cavaliers' 6 preseason games, but he has looked in a way like his old self. He's still scoring on a rampage, and he's still passing the ball, stealing the ball, this, that, and the other. but he's doing it on a much higher scale with more expectations. He's doing it in front of LeBron James's eyes. LBJ is standing around on the three-point line just observing the way that Kyrie Irving plays and attacks the rim. Did a piece on him, and it came out at about 12 o'clock noon. It's up at More Than a Fan and More Than a Fan Cleveland as well.
There you go. Eddie, have a great